like to welcome everyone here in the room and also any folks that are viewing. This is the Cincinnati School Board committee that is called Budget, Finance, and Growth Committee. And we welcome everyone. We have a number of things on our plate to get done today. But prior to starting, and we're going to ask our indispensable man to give us the directions regarding if you would like to participate. Rob.
I'd like to chat in today's meeting. The first 15 minutes of the meeting, please click the hand icon to then put your name, your school association, and your topic into the chat, and we will allow you to speak at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. And before we get started, we want to go around the room and we can do some introductions. You just, Rob, give us your name and your indispensable role that you play.
Tech support support.
Kevin, you're next.
Kevin Ashley, Director of Financial Reporting and Transparency in the Treasurer's Office.
Good morning, Lauren Roberts, Chief Audit Executive.
Jennifer Wagner, Treasurer and Chief Financial Officer.
Brandon Craig, Board Member.
Mike Morosky, Board Member.
Eve Bolton, Board Member.
Irene Wright, Superintendent of Schools.
Kimberly Hughes, the Assistant Treasurer.
Taya Greenwood, Manager of State and Federal Grants.
Cody Hutchins, Contract Analyst.
Thank you. And Ms. Davis?
Ms. Davis, Administrative Assistant.
Thank you very much. Well, we will get ourselves started. As we said, we have a long agenda, but I think much of this is material we've had some initial discussions about. So we'll start with the budget assumptions for the new fiscal year. Madam Treasurer, do you start or does anyone else?
In the budget cycle presentation, I included what I understand some of the considerations for budget assumptions.
Right.
So you want me to just go through that?
That would be great for the public's purpose. And by the way, thank you for your staff and everyone for a great 5-year forecast presentation last week, or is it last week or this week? I don't even remember anymore. This week. So thank you.
And before I start, I just wanted to publicly thank our voters and our taxpayers for the passage over levy. We are very grateful and blessed to have a very supportive tax base so that we continue our services to the students of Cincinnati. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer.
The PowerPoint I sent this morning. So you just flip straight to the third slide, the timeline. There we go. So just to kind of give a little bit of background on CPS is what method of budgeting, that it really begins in the month of October, where we take our enrollment extract to start building student projections for the next year. Student projections are built on by school, by grade, and condition of the student. So if they have students with disabilities, giftedness, ELL, economically disadvantaged, because we have staffing formulas that support those needs. Those projections are then fed into staffing formulas, and those are shared with the schools, usually right before the holiday break. And the formulas are built either from the collective bargaining agreements, state or federal law, and then some district practice, internal practice. From there, the schools will start focusing on their non-personnel, and they're working with their ILT to build the budget and the LSDMC that approves the budget before it comes back to us for review, compliance, and consolidation. We have a couple changes, so just focusing on more of the timeline. So in January, February timeframe is when the central administration begins their process. And then in March, April, May is when we start engaging the public. What I failed to mention was the board's involvement in this timeline with the new governance policy that's underway. I had a meeting scheduled yesterday with the board president to talk about yesterday or so.
Now you can hear.
All right, so factors that determine the budget equity policy that the board adopted in 2016. Oops, I put 2106, I need to fix that, 2016. And the language in that applies to the budget is that we're required to allocate annually, equitably, financial and human resources. So we're working through a new, we've had an iteration of equity building processes, and we've come up with a new equity index that we talked about before several months ago. We're trying to get some consensus and then start engaging board and unions and public. We've agreed to go back to zero-based budgeting. What that means is budget cannot be higher than the forecasted revenues of that year. We made some exceptions in the last couple of years because of the strategic plan and the pandemic and the ever-changing needs of the district. But in order to preserve our cash balance throughout the forecasted period, we need to control our expenses in the general fund. Also new this year is a consideration of the key performance indicators on contracts, all contracts, in determining whether they are supporting the student goals and outcomes that the board has drafted, and driving student performance. So we'll be looking at the cost per student for each contract and the measures of success and whether we're getting the bang for our buck, so to speak. Thank you. So here's a picture of the summary of this is my favorite slide of the forecast because it very clearly shows you the comparison to the revenues on the black and then the grays of the expenditures. And if we continue to allow our expenditures grow above our revenue structure, then we're going to dig into our cash balance. And we'll be forced to go back to the public for review. So this year's budget target is set at 565, which is the total of our revenues, not including advances, because advances are just a temporary movement of money. And comparatively speaking, our budget this year is 613. Next slide. So, graphically or pictorially, visually, this is a representation of how we come up with our investment priorities, where we get feedback from the board and that represents the community on what's important from year to year in the budget scope. Superintendent administration also work on those priorities, and then that gets fed into what we're funding project by project or initiative by initiative. The conversation Monday night around the building of the strategic plan, if I remember correctly, the idea was the strategic plan would be far enough along by April to inform the budget. Unfortunately, most of the budget will already have been built, so it's going to be kind of a build at the same time as you go, and knowing that the first year may not be, we shouldn't build the first year of the strategic plan where we can't fund it. And so it has to be some give and take, just because of the timing is going to be a little bit challenging. There's plenty of time between April and June to revise. I just wanted to caution that given the timeline and the activities it takes us to get through, that if we wait until April to start determining how we're going to fund the strategic plan, it will be a challenge. So we'll have to do it in sync. So these are some of the collections that I've received over several meetings and participating in the outcomes and the guardrail conversations, and then initial conversation with the superintendent on focus areas for improvement. So I just
Excuse me, Jen, improvement about what? Improvement of what we've done previously, or what? Outcome
so those are the
goals?
3 topics that you and I talked about like a week ago. The focus of the budget, the academic improvement, whole child commitment, and transportation. And that's a very short list that we just started discussing.
And if I might, they have some relevance to what we've been working on with goals and guardrails. So it's in that general area. Okay,
Yes.
cool.
So I won't read all the outcome books, but those are the goals, and I just short worded them and then phrases instead of the sentences they were. But so we need to figure out how we get from this slide to what we would finalize as the budget priorities. That's what I had intended to talk to Ben about initially. So I don't know if there's any feedback on that on the finance committee.
Thanks.
I think a lot of this that's in our goals are not necessarily something in a first year of a strategic plan that we would be wholesale changing per se. Is more of the focus around what other additional things are working, what things are not working, which would be things you would be doing anyway to a certain level. So I wouldn't imagine it'd be a substantial change that would be something that couldn't be done concurrently with regard to both building the strategic plan and figuring out our budget. Maybe that's probably how it should go on a normal place, but it's.
Yeah, so I'm in agreement with that. I'm just wondering if there's other topics that need to be a focus of budget. Not specifically spelled out under third grade, the CPP graduate unit, those focus areas.
Well, I would suggest that we don't, this portion, the governance portion, first is based on engagement last year regarding the superintendent search. So the community has expressed their views this time last year or what have you. And then the work we've done under governance as part of the strategic plan, however we go forward should not be super redundant, and it shouldn't be in contradiction
Correct, right.
of what we've done. And I don't think anybody would want to do that we were comfortable. The community is going to inform a little bit more about but what this means or what have you. But it would seem to me that this Member Craig just mentioned is that first year will have heavy emphasis on this stuff, because this is where you're wanting to kick it off and start to make a difference and then be able to see results. So this makes sense. But if you talk about other things, like I've said to you, I don't like the idea that it's to get rid of something old so we can have a new board initiative. It's not really that. It's like we move from one strategic plan to the next strategic plan. There'll be bigger things or more district-wide stuff or futuristic stuff. It's not going to counter what this has been. And it sounds like your initial budget piece could fit within some of the things we've talked about for the rest of the year regarding strategic planning. When you finish, I do want you to tell us a little bit more about all the budget that will already be built. And so go ahead.
Okay, so I will do that. But do you think that all the feedback sessions, I think you said you had 22 feedback sessions, will the result of that, do you think, reflect any changes up there?
I think there'll be some modifications. I don't know that we will necessarily, the 5 things that are on that list are still going to be things that are important that we'll be focused on. I don't know that there'll be anything that will substantially change our efforts to do stuff, because at the end of the day, we are still going to be looking at certain specific things within that. I think that also gets a little bit into, we'll have some of the interim goals, the draft interim goals that will also be more in line with more to the budget question there as to how do we do those things, and what do we do to what do we focus our efforts in financially, fiscally, to make sure those things get done. Because third grade reading is a wonderful topic. I don't think we'll ever not do something with third grade reading.
Right.
But whether or not to what level we do CCP and workforce credit may change based on what the superintendent can kind of set some guidance on with her level of the.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. I think I would just like to add that in our conversations, we also wanted to make sure that the priorities were broad enough that they included all of the conversations that we've had, because what we have to do at this point is thinking about all of the feedback that we've gotten is really take a deep look at every initiative that we're currently doing. And some of that has to happen now as we prepare for where we go in April and beyond. So I think to Treasurer Wagner's point, it's in terms of thinking about building and what's done. You know, we build we build number of teachers or staffing, for example, which is a huge part based on enrollment at this point. And so that's a process that starts early spring, which was one of the first things shared. And then from there, we do have to start looking at, you know, if we're looking to go a different direction with some of the initiatives that we have right now, you know, what those recommendations would look like. So I think that it's really to make sure that we're, again, broad enough that we are covering all of the areas that have been raised as areas of concern. Now, how we then begin to address that through the budget would be the recommendations that we would bring back.
Yeah, I would see the 5 up there and the 5 guardrails too. I would see that as the bones of what we're doing. You know, I was not trying to build a body, but we're building a budget. These are broad enough and important enough and could impact results enough that these are the bones. I think when we look at the rest of what we're doing on strategic planning, it would not necessarily be another list of New Shore, Old Shore initiatives as much as we have not revised our vision or our mission since it's either 2014 or 2000, what I can't remember. I think it's 2014. So the continuation of the strategic plan effort built on this as the platform from which we launch, just like this was launched on the old engagement stuff for the superintendent, this platform, it seems to me, would help us be the launch pad, but more particularly what we would be doing further is not necessarily coming up with more initiatives necessarily, but it would be devising a vision and a mission that describes what the community who owns the district and the board and whoever have envisioned where we want to go in the future. This is sort of the what. Y'all have to come up with the how to do it, but we got to come up with why we're doing it. I mean, and part of that is, I mean, that's that role stuff where we don't want to get the roles confused, but the community wants to be able to have a strategic plan that reflects their interests. So even the calendar outline that you have presented, it would seem to me y'all are starting to work on the hows after we pass the guardrails and the goals on the 4th of December. You know, probably already starting to work on that with whatever. But once that happens, then I think the board would take a little bit of a breather and then do some more community engagement, not about these, but about the vision and the mission and where's the future or something. And then try to be ready and sync when you said something about, you know, I would think that would be happening in February and March, and which is why you all are building the budget and stuff. And then by the time we get to, you know, April, where we come back in sort of to see whatever, we have enough of the vision and mission to begin to impact the future more than changing any of this. But I will say after 20 some of those focus groups, I will tell you there will be some changes, but it's going to be language.
Yeah.
The community absolutely does not want this thou shalt not. I mean, that's just not where we live. And that's not even Midwest nice. So we're not going to be doing that. So, I mean, that's that kind of stuff and all the strategies and tactics that y'all might be developing. I think this actually is a nice parallel as to the budget because you want to pass it in June and pass the 5-year and whatever. So I think we're trying to accommodate where you all are. Long story. Sorry.
Sorry, next slide.
And I like these, excuse me, I also like the 3 focus draft budget priorities, the academic improvement, the whole child, and transportation. I mean, those are huge. I know our internal auditor person likes that whole transportation thing. She's been worried about that for a few years. Go ahead.
So this is a graphical depiction on that process, so I'll explain what my comment about most of the budget will be done.
Mm-hmm.
So student projections are done by the end of November. The staffing that are built off of that is done by the end of December. Non-personnel is done by the end of January. So basically, the school budgets are complete, for the most part, 90% complete by the end of January. The equity index is a little unknown, so I'll commit to a timeline on that one. Then the next slide shows you central office process. So then we take the budget priorities once they're like blessed in public, and share those with all the central budget managers. They build their budgets. Some of the budgets are built and they are spent directly into the schools. Things like curriculum, transportation, technology, and a lot of their My Tomorrow techs are budgeted centrally, but they actually work in the school. So they have these, hybrid. And then what central is whatever the department needs to function. So that typically starts in February. That process starts in February and by the end of March. And those are done. So if we can have enough knowledge on if there's anything new to consider in the strategic plan, then we won't be revising budgets. And, in 29 and a half years, 29 years in this district, the budget ask has never been smaller than the budget target. So we're always have this cycle of how do we pare back. It's just everybody thinks they can accomplish more than they can.
Well, and I think you have to review that because it's not hearing anything from the public yet. It's not even hearing anything yet from the board necessarily when the ask is so much bigger than what we have. That's coming from y'all.
Right.
So I claim no ownership of how much y'all have put together, and we're all sitting up here. Okay, we'll go get the money.
So I failed to mention the town halls. I forgot to put those in. So November 29th is the next one, and focusing on the forecast of revenues. The January one will be focusing on the budget, and so we'll use that one to start your engagement with the community. I don't remember the next one after that. So was there another slide after that?
Questions? Comments? Advice? Morosky?
Clear. I think y'all covered it with the other stuff too. Clear.
Yeah, I think I think we're in a good place to be able to do both the budget and the strategic plan kind of in concert with each other, so that you also can guide a little bit of the idea of the strategic plan based on what our budget actually says we can afford. Yeah. And so it would be good not to plan something that we can't actually pay for.
Right.
But, so I just want to finish with clarity on the comment about cutting things in order to make room for new stuff. We can't continue to fund everything we're funding right now and do anything new. That costs money.
Well, I, for one, second that and have for a long time, and we have to be willing to cut. But I'm just happy that we're thinking about revenue versus expenditure. And I don't know that, y'all have done that. I don't think the board has embraced that to the level that the board needs to embrace it. But going back, you're reviewing all the contracts, right? Regardless of size?
Yes.
That's right.
So to me, you know where I am on that.
Yes.
That is expenditure with very little accountability, and it's pieced out across the district and site by site. So that even before you tell us which initiatives we can't have, you're going to be able to tell us, and then we'll probably say no, which contracts to cut. So that's going to be our first point of conflict. But please do make it a big long list. Well, I hope so. Rather than we've been with these people forever or whatever. And the other piece, I think, is talking to a couple board members that aren't on the finance committee, the report cards, the financial data from each of the schools. And now we know the CFT leadership is very into that data too. I would assume that's going to impact, it should, at least where we know that the equation makes sense versus some of the stuff that makes no sense. I would hope that, I think those are enlightening, site by site.
Yes.
So how does that work in besides having to figure out the CFT contract and
So you remember last, or 2 years ago, I started presenting the school by school budgets as a per pupil cost of that. And so we'll continue to do that. It needs to be, budget's different than expense. What the report card showing is what got expended, not what got budgeted.
right.
So it may not look as equitable. We may have equitably distributed the budget, but it didn't get spent.
Right.
And just
That's a huge part to impart to us,
yes.
is that it is the expenditure piece or not. It's so it falls to the site.
Is
So
that
you-
something?
Go
Is
ahead,
that something
please.
you would? And I guess in that conversation about where we go from going forward with some of these, I think that actually is good information to have with regard to if we budgeted for a certain amount for a program and it looks really equitable in that year and they spent, 2/3 of that, and they came back the next year and asked for more. It's really hard for us to then be able to say, hey, you did such a great job spending 2/3. We want to give you a quarter more.
And then the added advantage is the superintendent's team is doing programmatic audits. So we'll know what money that we're investing in programs that aren't being as effective as we may have thought so in the past. So hopefully that'll help guide some of those decisions as well. So the last comment I want to make before we move on is preempt the argument. We'll go back to the revenue as the target, right? To preempt the argument that the revenues forecasted too low. Have we go back and look at the accuracy of our forecasting for the last 4 to 5 years. We have a greater than 98% accuracy rate predicting the forecast, the revenue of the year. So in the past, you're not forecasting enough, make it bigger so we can have a bigger budget.
Mm-mm.
Not doing that. So you saw in the third year, we're predicting like a $700,000 cash balance, which is very, very small. We don't sneeze and miss that. So we have to be very careful. Okay. So ready to move on to the next?
Yeah, if there's other questions, I just, what I'm hearing though is that there's some new pieces to this, or at least a greater commitment and perhaps support from the superintendent to help in your outline, is that we do have, we are evaluating virtually all contracts. We are paying attention to the comparative analysis where it's good, not to our benefit, but where the equation makes sense of whatever we learned regarding the Ohio report card site by site. If that, and then we have these programmatic audits, and then I think somewhere along the line we also talked about all the things that are available at our schools in part because of our community learning center piece or our lead agencies. I mean, and that can be somewhere kind of in a parking lot, but I think it'd be great for the board to actually even have a sense of what's at every site. I appreciate the programmatic audits, big time. Big time.
Yeah, we talked about that in either answer policy last month about the inventory of all the in-kind services that happen. I don't remember where that landed.
I think there was an interest from that, maybe us saying, what was it? Because didn't we talk about, it was in policy or finance?
We were talking about both. Infusion is we've been talking about the resource coordinators and the CLCs and all that in policy, but that piece I believe was in finance.
Yeah.
Anybody?
Well, we'll have to wait till a board meeting to do that. But yeah, I think you were in the room when we were talking about it, but I don't think it was an assignment. It was something, wouldn't that be good? Because it's so hard to attribute whatever dollars are kind of these in-kind dollars. I think that's how that came up. And they're providing services that we don't, when we give them space or what have you. That, I mean, my dream would be somewhere, and I've said this forever, it'd be great to have something on, 65 page 65 pages, a page for each school or however many, and this is what is offered there, this is the program, this is the blah, 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 this is the extra stuff that's there. I mean, that's not been done in years. And so that would be very helpful. And out of ad hoc, my big dream is a wall map that has the district on it, has all, and it has all the schools on it. It's divided by the three quarters, which I think the board's coming along on that one. But more particularly, it would say what those three sections, what the schools are, what are we, the access. I mean, it would be great where there's a community learning center or where there's a school-based health center. We don't have a district. The best district map. Oh, you should have gone to your office, Mr. Craig, and pick up. Next meeting, you have to bring that map that's in your office. What is it, 1892 or something? It's old. That's probably the last true district map that's ever been drawn. But that would be so helpful. How do you even have a budget or even go ahead to the future without having that kind of information? That'd be great. I like all these things that are happening right now to get to a good place. Any have other questions or comments for the treasurer? All right, ready for the next?
Yeah, so the preschool financial report is not complete.
Right.
And so we're going to push that to December.
Thank you.
And I don't know that we have the list of CPS properties and land and stuff. At least that time we got.
Okay, and when we get there, we can describe what we are talking about. And we can do that now. In December also, we have that long meeting of contracts.
Well, it'd be different this year.
Good. It talks about like what it's getting accomplished or what?
We're doing the preliminary review. Of
Super.
All 900 and some, how many, Cody?
Like 1,000.
Yeah.
Like 1,000.
And she's the math person, and she's rounding up.
That's right.
I'm going to remember that.
Feels like 1,000.
Right, but you're doing all of them.
We're doing them all.
Good.
From that is
Plenty of
when we'll
wasted
bring
money
to Finance
there.
Committee for recommendation.
So as we plan next month, the format is different, or we're not bringing in everybody that has the responsibility. Cool. That's great. And that you will already have completed this. And are you bringing recommendations, or are you just sharing information? It's okay if you're not doing recommendations yet.
I think we will have recommendations, maybe not for all 905, but.
Well, if you can't do them all, I don't want to hear anything.
1,000.
1,000. She's actually gonna go find 95 more contracts. Because she does like to be right.
WRIDHT. That's right.
So, okay, well, we would welcome that because we hate that day.
Oh, great.
And so
I'm
that's
glad you
good.
like the new format.
Yeah, that's.
We weren't sure whether you would like it or
Don't we
not.
like it? Yeah, we're not.
Oh,
No.
great.
No, I mean, I just misspoke. Is that okay with you guys?
Yeah,
I know you don't.
You hired a superintendent.
That's right. That's right. We got between our superintendent and treasurer, we'll get the recommendations. You all do the review, and then we'll say no, and then or yes, and then you can go back to the drawing board on whatever it is. Okay, cool. That's great. So that helps us on number 6. Next, oh, and preschool will be then too. For the following, because we haven't had a preschool report for a while, and that's a big money issue for me too. Okay.
So on the third topic, that was a question that came out of Finance Committee at the last meeting. And so Kaya created a little spreadsheet for me. The question came because there was a whole bunch of lead math specialists that were budgeted in Title I. And a lot of those people were repurposed to fill core vacancies when school started, right? Core academic vacancies. So Julie was concerned about, well, what happened with those positions and that money? And nothing's happened yet. There's 19 vacant positions that were targeted in title for the schools. still sitting at the schools. We were gonna wrap that into the conversation with, just recently informed of what our carryover dollars were for this past year. So that's on our next agenda to talk about how to use that money wisely. Does that
It helps us. So this was, as you mentioned, this was something that CFT president brought up, if I recall correctly. And so you have an answer. And she's not here today, so if you can communicate, that would be great. We'll send her an email.
Okay.
That'd be great.
So thank you, Ty, for that. Also.
You know I love these charts, especially Ty's.
Okay, then also the next question came out from the last finance committee when we showed the cliff coming back into the forecast in the general fund, and the cliff had changed. There was, as a result of conditions changing and some choices and priorities that we wanted to make. So Kevin's going to kind of walk you through that document.
Great.
You want to pull that? Thank you earlier today. It's not in the box. Yeah, this is kind of a preliminary comparison between what the original flood plan was and what we used as part of the forecast. You'll see a couple of the things may need tweaked as we go forward. So those are kind of highlighted there in orange. And you actually have a hard copy, so but some of the key ones that, so the rows that are yellow are the ones that are still remain in the clip. So those will match up with the proposed column. The ones that are white were in the original plan that are now not included. So for instance, the expansion of nursing contracts was originally anticipated to come back in FY25 and split between general fund and funds. So through discussions that the treasurer and superintendent had, that was actually removed from it. So I don't know if you want to speak to some of those specifics. I just want to continue on, but there's also under curriculum, evidence-based curriculum. Originally, there was anticipated 7.3 million would be coming back through those discussions. That was actually. So you can see the effect on general fund was about 15 million in reduction over those 2 years, 24, 25. I did exclude 23 because since we're already into that. But this is trying to take that initial plan for 24, 25 versus what we were looking at going into the next 2 fiscal years.
Take some minutes to look at everything.
Come on.
Exactly. Speed read.
Share the answers at the next meeting. This will continue to get refined as the budget priorities get refined and things happen differently with COVID and alternate funding sources are discovered.
A couple questions.
Go for it.
So with the nursing, are we cutting nurses or are we not expanding nurses?
We're gonna have to go back to a different level. And we were, but well, first of all, so prior to COVID, we were spending about $2.4 million in nursing contracts. During COVID, it went up to almost $8 million.
Oh.
But we didn't spend that much money because they had 25 vacancies last year, and so we're not getting the service anyway. But we've always said that's part of the cliff, and we cannot sustain it. Or if we're going to sustain it, we're going to get cut out of the general fund to absorb it. So it's going to be a combination of both. But we're also looking at alternate funding sources to help cover that.
And then just one more, and then I'll look at this more. But what is evidence-based curriculum? And there's an asterisk, but I don't know where it goes.
Mostly the science adoption.
Got it.
We're not doing another science adoption.
Got it. Okay.
What we're trying to do with what we do with the technology team is on all the tech leases is to get us like a 5-year schedule so we know like what's repeating, what's dying.
Sure.
we're trying to get curriculum to do the same thing in terms of these are the annual adoption cycles, but these are so there's a huge investment the first year, but the following years are just some smaller recurring expenses. I'm trying to build that schedule out so that, number one, we can use it in the forecast and the budget cycle and the planning.
And I think we would say we were trying to get them to do it before.
Yes.
They're doing it now.
Okay. Cool.
Add on to Mike's question, and I think this is something that might be a little bit explained out by what we'll get in Cal, because we've moved student achievement into Cal meetings, but I think that also helps us understand what we're actually doing with the curriculum, because I think that was one of the struggles we had in student achievement was that there was inconsistent information about when curriculums were coming before the full board, what information was, what was budgeted out for those things, what was not budgeted out. And so I think this is saying we're going to kind of align them to a cycle so that it makes whole sense as to what happens with the curriculum. Is that my understanding correctly?
Correct. And I think the challenge is, and the reason that the continuum of recommendations is so important is we had not had new curriculum, in many areas in excess of 12, 15 years. And so knowing that now that we have updated curriculum, you don't repurchase all of the curriculum every year. So then when it's time again, what is that window of time? So over a 3 to 5 year window, when do we need to get additional, some consumables you need to get every year, but some of the kits you don't need to get every year, depending on what the area is. So I think that's what we're referencing.
And then the other question really is just some of the things that are on here that we are doing at a certain level that will come to the general fund. I'm imagining those are also things that we are looking at, whether or not they're successful, whether or not when we're doing the review programming and stuff.
Right.
Okay, so there may be changes that come from just they're not as effective as we thought they were, or that they're not. We're not seeing the results or the expenditures.
Some of the past practice has been that they start with when they're building their budgets, start with their current year budget and just add on new things to them. And even though they're told not to do that last year, it happens. And so we're specifically going back to the blank page. Not even staff. We're not even populating staff. Everything's going to get looked at and justified. We're leaving millions of dollars on the table that other places could have used with that practice.
Okay. I'm happy about the zero base. I would rather this be a transformative budget, and I don't think that means that we have to wait and make it transformative in 3 years. I think if you're concentrating on those 5 goals and the guardrails are over here, a lot of that's up for discussion, I think. But if you could transform, as you were trying to, the budget process and transform what's happening, just using the 5 things we're concentrating on. If we don't think incrementally, if those 5 things aren't incremental, make them be transformative. Make that be something where we're concentrating an awful lot of resources there. It makes sense for that first year of the budget. It would seem to me. And I think whatever we can get rid of regarding incrementally, I think too, whatever departments have not been functioning very well, have some major things to try to explain or justify. How much stuff do we outsource? Yeah. And a lot of the times that's financially reasonable and good, but it also grows like topsy. It's the outsourcing. If there's things, I'd really like you to. I'm worried about the inflation. I'm worried about the recession piece. If indeed there's going to be one, I don't know enough to know either of those 2 things. But beyond inflation and recession, I'm just concerned about how much we outsource versus bring in.
Last year, actually the last 2 years, we started having conversations about, because my concerns about the whole vendor outsource relationship.
Right.
But in terms of determining the cost benefit analysis of whether individual employees, particularly around technology, will be better off in-house. So they're evaluating this thing. And, education, and that represents a really large outsource function. Technology, transportation, resource coordination. So we do a lot. ABC.
ABC.
Yeah, the athletic director. So.
And maybe there's stuff we should be doing that we're not doing because we can't manage it or because somebody else knows better or whatever. But I do think that looking at what is outsourced needs to be there. And I mean, the Hamilton County Education Service Center, Diesel, Pete. We could have 3 more schools.
Yeah, we've reduced this year, but yes, you're correct.
I mean, that's contracting out, and some of the people that come in and do a good job for us were our people to begin with. Well, keep them.
Right.
Or give them some other whatever. If I see anything that even looks like the last 18,000 years, I'm going to vote no. But no, and in fairness to Jen, she has tried, and so have along the way several finance committees of boards too tried to change. But the bureaucracy is too big. It's a pathology of bureaucracy. Keep funding me. I'm eating this up. Okay. So I'm glad we have a meeting of the minds between our treasurer and our superintendent. And
I think we also have to get prepared, though, having gone through this process now, in previous school districts. I think we also have to get prepared for the outcry that goes along with that.
Oh, yeah.
Because that comes along with, everybody has a connection to everybody and everything. And so it's really important for us to dig in very, very deeply. So knowing that the recommendations that we make as the leader of the district are those other recommendations that we believe are in the best interest of the district. So I think that we also, while this is just the finance committee, I think the conversation is also appropriate with the larger board and the finance committee, because it's not possible to change this kind of historical practice and not have an outcry, and not have those that have connectivity to begin the outreach and begin the onslaught. So the advantage that we have at this point is an advantage of time so that we can come back with quality data around the recommendations that are being made.
I think to that point, though, I think it's also about the culture change and how some of those things are done, too, because some of the things that we are outsourcing become a bad habit of folks not going through the appropriate channels to get things done. So we have to do it in a unique way on the fly, and then it just stays in this. And so I think that is a culture change that the district is experiencing, but it's also a culture change for us as a board to recognize that sometimes we do need to come back and if it was meant to be temporary, make it temporary and find a long-term solution.
Yeah, I would add to all of this that, there'll be outcry from board members. And
Right.
so be it. We're elected officials and we're representing the community. And for the second time today, I'll quote Susan Cranley. I didn't come here to rubber stamp whatever y'all present. And so it's we as long as the community, and everybody's got to earn everybody's trust about this too. Like, okay, how are we finding out what's valuable, not valuable? Well, you can substantiate it. The word recommendation is always problematic. Mm-hmm. It is, we said, I think last one about proposals or some options, or these are some things to be thinking about. It frames it so it's not a power thing.
Or suggestion.
Yes.
Yeah.
As long, because once that word recommendation, it's like, well, we don't want to not support you or whatever. So I think that's, but I'm thrilled that we're going to try to have a transformative budget, and I'm liking that your calendar plan is conducive to where I'm not sure. In fairness to Ben, I think Ben has a little bit of a different calendar in mind regarding the strategic plan. But listening to the discussion the other night, I think what we talk about kind of parallels where you all are. and gives you the space you need before you come back and we get mad at you. Which is bound to happen.
We're still
But-
gonna manage it.
And that's okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, that's a good budget discussion. Fasten your seatbelts. What is that line from It's All About Eve?
Is that the line?
Yeah, fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy night. It's a great show. They made it into a musical. All right, Lauren Bacall.
You
Applause.
think they'll let me buy Kevlar and call the uniform?
Yeah, just write it off. You know, the sad thing is there's an awful lot of community folks that are elected and serving in administration around this country that have started to think that they have to. It's scary, but we're in a good place. We're working together and keeping the community in mind and helping them tell us what to do. What else?
So, the next item on the list is the list of CPS owns properties and land, and, I doubt very seriously the superintendent's even seen that email yet, but you've been with the schools for days. So, I think we'll have to just
Man, pick it up,
shorten the
girl.
timeframe of this committee through us.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of time.
No, well, and there's no super rush, although I think it should be in our planning. Because I'm thinking, you know, as we've said, in both ad hoc and I think even policy and definitely in finance over the last several months, we have to be looking at school consolidation. We have to be looking at, is there property we can sell that it would be okay if the charters got it? Because, you know, we're hamstrung by law regarding if we put something up for sale, the charters get to get it. So, I mean, so we have to be thinking. And I will tell you, in at least three of the focus groups I did, and I think I did 8 or 9, a couple with Brandon and whoever, and this middle school interest is happening from the community.
Really?
Yes.
I came to the district, it was all about getting rid of the middle school.
And it may still be, but at least it was getting rid, the facilities master plan was K-8, and it was the 9-12. We built the whole district around it
Right.
because the elementary people said, get rid of these 7th and 8th graders because we're spending we can't even teach kids to read because we're doing discipline with the 7th and 8th grade. And prior to that, our junior highs apparently were, this is before me in the district, were disastrous.
That's like Lord of the Flies.
Oh, seriously.
You put 7th and 8th graders.
Well, that's just ugly.
My understanding from a little bit of back history there was that the ability to control that transition from K through 6 into a 7th and 8th setting where there was expectations that they would be able to do more and behave better and all those other things to prepare them for that 9-12 just didn't flow correctly. And so
Now the same thing is happening.
yeah, and so I think some ways there's always that question of what do you do with the junior high age students who in some cases need to be learning differently because they have to be prepared for some of the upper level classes, but are not always prepared equally to get to that point throughout the district. And so I think that's a lovely conversation that I think you all are somewhat having in the ad hoc.
Yeah, and part of it is we had to do what we had to starting moving from K-8 to this the K-6 to 9 to 7-12. It had to be. The elementaries were, I mean, we were reshaping everything, but we did make, and I say this all the time, we made a promise that we didn't keep. We told the community, told the kids, told their parents that we would somehow control that transition, even within the new buildings. We would have a way of having the 7th and 8th graders have sort of separate space. We'd be looking for teachers that do middle school and like it. It's a rare breed. It's a rare breed. God love them. I mean, some of my closest friends are into the whole middle school thing. But this is happening. And there are schools that are within a mile of each other, all both under enrolled. So it's not like we're going to build a middle school. You'd have to be using buildings that exist. So I maybe next finance, if you guys have a new format for a contract, And the only other thing we have to do is preschool, at least for sure that we would, then maybe we can talk a little bit about facilities and what have you, and enrollment, and because I know we've done that, and you all have produced those charts out the wazoo. I mean, about enrollment and what have you. Maybe be updated for this year, although I think Jeremy has done that for ad hoc.
15 years ago when I did all that work.
Yeah.
At the time, we were saving over $1 million every time we consolidated schools. And I'm sure that's probably doubled by now. So, I mean, that's principal you don't need, APs you don't need, security, nursing, you don't need them.
And I will tell you, the 3-quarter piece, it works very nicely. Even with the location of the buildings and the facilities that we have, you can insist on access. And, people are choosing the kinds of schools that they want.
But to the superintendent's point earlier, though, that also will elicit responses that we have to be prepared to address.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember worked for the district a long time ago, and they decided to close an elementary school that was under-enrolled by a substantial portion that was being utilized for other things. That's when the community finally showed up. And so it created a lot of tension on a building that every year had less and less students, not by like a small amount, but by a large amount.
And it might be again, unless we have a narrative that makes sense to people. That's why I think if there's an interest in middle schools, if that looks like a better choice, if we can do it as part of a larger kind of plan. We've already had some communities tell us what they'd like to see, and the folks in Winton Hills said we'd like to be able to go to school on our own school instead. So there's some low fruit, hanging fruit on that. But having lived through and been, I think, a big part of the FMP, you just again fasten your seatbelt.
They just sparked something that we talked about yesterday in this economics class that we're in, that school districts are considering changes to their salary structure away from steps and lanes, so steps and seniority and lanes in terms of degrees, towards difficult schools, difficult subjects. It's really fascinating. It'd be interesting to have if you can do something around that to people.
Yes, I mean it's the Great Reset, as we saw in our school board journal. It's COVID's impact all of that, of having to rethink everything. So transformative.
Okay, so
be. And so I want to make sure that we have them in hand before I say that we're going to have them. But I did want to provide that update in terms of Metro. The information that was shared during the board meeting on Monday in terms of Metro is not information that has been provided to us. So the information that we have in terms of routes, in terms of students getting to school on time, in terms of students having access to the routes and not having the multiple stops that they would have, that is not something that's been shared. It wasn't shared at the beginning of the year. It hasn't been shared until this time. I have asked pretty consistently that if there is a specific concern, please let us know that so that we can research that one, because what we're seeing is, and that's not happened. So we've not gotten that information from anybody, although that's what we heard at the board meeting the other night. In terms of our yellow buses, we are consistently meeting with our contractors. I did, through our chief of operations, have a conversation with him just week before last and sent at this point, a different kind of communication to those that are responsible for the yellow buses, because many of the concerns that we're getting right now for yellow buses in terms of notification for parents, in terms of, stops coming, individuals coming earlier, all of that is managed by the contractor. It's managed by the person that we are paying to do that. And so they have the GPS, they have the information for the families, they have the app. And so it is their responsibility to do the notification. It is something that they have done for a period of time. So why there's a disconnect this year with them doing that, what they would share with us is because many of them are UTS and First Student were the two. Peterman did not, but UTS and First Student, when we realized that we needed 40 additional buses a couple of days before it was time for students to come, they did stand up and say they would assist us with additional routes. And they've done that. But what that's also done for them is it stretched them really thin on the other end of the spectrum for some of the other areas that they generally would work on. So they have their sub drivers that are driving regular routes. So as they have individuals that are out, it causes more challenges for them. We have removed we continue to remove students from dead routes, essentially routes that students are not there. They've been routed because we route all of the students. But the students are not there, so we're consistently removing those. So from going from that 40 bus ask or 40 driver ask is really what it is, to a 20 driver ask at this point. But there's still a 20 driver ask. And so what we have done though with them is in a different type of language at this point, going back to the contract, because there is an expectation for a particular service in terms of that. I will share that is a slippery slope for us. And the reason that it is a slippery slope is because on one end, we get the questions about the on-time performance, right? And on-time is within that 5 minutes. So because the feedback that we get is we could increase our on-time performance for the routes that we were originally assigned for by not doing the additional routes that we are doing for you now to get students back and forth to school. So that becomes the trade-off in terms of what it is that we're looking at and trying to get any of the situations remedied. The larger issue in terms of suggestions that we would be raising for the board to really engage around, there are some decisions that will need to be made at the board level in order for us to really try to have a true impact on where we are with transportation. Several things. One, right now, we provide transport, and I feel rhetorical when I say this, but I want to just say it again. One, we provide, this year we moved from a 1.25 away from the home to a 1 in terms of miles away from the home. The state requires 2. So when we did that, we then increased the number of students that needed transportation. That was the first. The second, we changed start times in several of the schools to what we understand the early start times to be. When those changes were made, they were made with the understanding that the 7th and 8th grade students would be on Metro. Those 7th and 8th grade students are not on Metro. So we changed by 25% the number of students that already needed transportation. And then we put all of the 7th and 8th grade students on the buses as well. So that's 2 areas that are working against us to start with. And then 3, we talked about the optimization study that was done, that the map that was used for that was not the map of the city. And as a result of that, we are still going through the process of cleaning up stops. The 4th that is really large, and I've worked in large school districts with transportation. The 4th that is really, really large is the fact that we have students 7th through 12th grade, or 7th and 8th grade, since the 9th through 12th grade students are on Metro, that are going across the city. So essentially, we send buses to every neighborhood in this city consistently. So if we don't have, so where you get the most streamlined approach for buses is having a 3-tiered process. That means you have specific start times that are 3 start times. Bus transportation folks would like for that to be 3-hour periods. If you're starting a 7:30, an 8:30, a 9:30, which is really late times, but that's where you get the maximum for the times. What we also have to consider is where we do that in terms of what's happening in school buildings, because right now the start times comes through the school and or the school recommendation in many of the areas. So there's not a consistency in K through 6 schools start at this time, K through 8 schools start at this time. There's not that level of consistency. So those are about 6 different things that we're collectively going to have to talk about, and they're not quick fixes in terms of this is what we could do starting in January. Because at this point, if we changed anything, the fastest thing to change would have anything that we change in January is going to have a detrimental impact at this point, and it doesn't give us any time to socialize that information with families. But I do want to be clear about where we are and kind of how we've gotten to the situation that we are in, and the things that we're going to have to decide moving into next year to fix some of that. The other question that we do have to address is whether we continue to provide transportation to every school. If that is something that we know that it's important in terms of equity, great. Then how do we look at and thinking of programming, which is why I always bring up the programming issue, the 7 to 12 concept from every neighborhood going across the entire city. It is going to consistently be problematic, especially as long as our students are on yellow list.
I will say, Mr. Morosky and I, 5 years ago, started working this problem, and the resistance was from the administration.
It's terrible.
And now the reality is we have ad hoc, which is good, but now unless there is an effort to accelerate the action, we're going to be here 5 years from now with all these same, because these are systemic problems and systemic commitments.
Yes.
And we're going to have to jumpstart some sort of activity to get us there. And so this is really good stuff. Now we don't know who the finance committee is going to be beginning in January.
Not yet.
Not yet. But I would suggest whoever that is, in January we ought to have maybe a few topics. And one of them, and I mean a few, only 3 or whatever, I wouldn't think it would be a bad idea to say we're going to talk about these transportation these situations so that we can get it into board dialogue in January with the discussion of minutes, and then actually start what you're saying is going to happen. Because you're right, I mean, it affects the communities. The board probably is not going to start charging people for transportation. Okay, we're not going to do that. But the reality is there are other things we need to do. And much of this started years and years ago when we got this whole schools of choice stuff happening. And I understand why we did it. We did it to save the middle class from leaving us. We did it to support choice. It was a great, but we are in a different place now. And that's why these attendance boundaries are so important and who's doing what to where. But I think the initial issue, we did healthy starts, and I think we're very committed to that to a degree. We can't have high school starting at 9:30 because the children can't do extracurriculars. So we have to, maybe some moderation there on healthy starts. But the other piece of this is that once Metro eliminated the extra routes, it moved the 7th and 8th graders off of Metro. I mean, they did it because our families didn't want their 7th and 8th graders on Metro buses that were just general Metro buses. And so that was the outcry. Maybe that's not the outcry now. We know some of them have gone back to Metro because there's more convenience to it or whatever. But I will say the thing that took the house of cards down was Metro, who still can't give us the information we're requesting, pulling those extra routes. Because once that happened, after they've been doing that for 4 decades, we were screwed. And the fact that it happened without any warning was devastating to us. So I welcome a good discussion and good work time on this, Mr. Morosky and then Mr. Craig.
Yeah, I was going to say, we did start talking about this 5 years ago, well before COVID, well before driver shortage, well before Metro took away extra. We knew this was a problem. And we were told we were idiots, almost literally, which was frustrating at the time. But, you know, and the great irony too, or maybe it's not ironic, is that with the schools of choice piece, in an effort to actually promote equity and real choice, is also the reason we get screwed so hard by the state voucher program. So we have less money because we are offering real equity and real school choice by definition, not by ideology or politics. And then we're getting screwed again by trying to offer transportation. I mean, we can't keep doing it. And to your point, the ad hoc committee, which I'm glad is a committee, and that was a fight too, that has to be accelerated. Yes. We're going to have to make a change, and yes, people are going to be mad, but you know what? People are mad at us all the time. I mean, and if you can't do that, then you don't belong here. I mean, we can't keep doing that. I mean, are people going to be more mad that their kid literally never gets to school on time for an entire academic year, or that they have to? There's a neighborhood high school that has great programs, you know. So I agree with you. Whoever is on the finance committee, this has to be figured out. But I do think that work of the ad hoc committee needs to speed up.
Right.
You know, like the first meeting of the budget finance group, I talked about the fact that the ultimate solution to our transportation issues is not transportation. The ultimate solution to our transportation issues is that our schools have to have programming so that folks don't feel the need to send their kid one part of the district to another when there would be a perfectly great program for their kid near them, or that we actually have programs or schools near their kid. I still note that the weird shape of our wonderful city, led by lovely folks who came many years before me, means that we have certain pockets of our city that have wonderful houses with people in them and no school that is above a certain level. Or, if you're all the way out in Taylor Park, you want to send your kid to Walnut, that's a ride. And as much as we can say that catching the Metro would have been a great thing, that's still a long.
There's a streetcar in those years, I've been told by people even older.
That is a long ride for some of those students to go through each day. And so the reality in some ways is that our transportation woes are a part of just the nature of our district, the nature of how our city's set up, the nature of how our schools are set up. I think some of the conversation we were having with regard to whether or not we have middle schools, some of these things will help. But I also do think ultimately some of this goes back to, as our district tries to bring in folks and give people opportunities, are we doing it the right way sometimes? It's not even always that we did the wrong thing, it's that we do it the right way. So even things like healthy start time, the acknowledgement is that we want to do healthy start times. The problem is if everybody picks 8:30 to start, there's no transportation solution that'll work where we get everybody to every school at 8:30, right? And so, or again, stuff like we have one group that says they want healthy starts, the other group says they want to participate in this particular sports league. Well, if the sports game started at 3:30 and you start school at 8:30, and your ability to participate in that league is not really reasonable. And so I think some of those things are all stuff that happened as part of us wanting to do positive things, have positive conversations, but there were factors that didn't always get thought of or didn't always get brought up in the right way. So I'm happy to hear that those things are part of the discussion that we're doing now with regard to looking into transportation. I do think it should be something we talk about at the beginning of the year. I don't know that there will be a solution before the fall of next year that will work for everything, but we can start catching some of the things that we can and improving some of the things that we can so that we give the district the ability, our role as a board, to give the district the ability to find the solutions that work. I think that's one of the things that we may have hindered at times in our effort to do one thing. We as a board put together a decision that impeded the ability for the district to adjust and to make certain decisions. So
Thank you. Ms. Morosky?
This may be an immature perspective of being a board member, but I've applied it to board roles my whole life. I mean, and the board that I report to does this for me, and they have to do it frequently, is take punches. That's part of our job. That's like half of our job if we do it right, is to take the punches, to your point, so you can do it, which is what was so bizarre about you and me going out there and getting everyone in Pleasant Ridge pissed off at us.
Yes.
And we just said something in a meeting. We didn't even go for it, but it still doesn't even have. They're still mad at us.
Right.
And the administration's like, well, we can't. And so,
Why
like,
not?
I mean, that's our job. And I agree with you. It probably is next fall, but I don't know if it is. We have to take some action on this. And we have socialized to the superintendent's point. We socialized this point beginning in that meeting when people came after us with pitchforks and torches.
You got it.
Eve Bolton and Mike Morosky are sending my kid to Kennedy Heights and Silverton School. I was like, what are you talking about? Anyway, whatever. That was then. This is now, but we have to do it.
And I think the other thing that we also have to be very cognizant of in the conversation that we're having, we have many of our buses right now that are running routes and and I'm not talking about those that was the plan, because there were some of the schools that the previous team planned it that way so that the students they have these staggered routes. Well, that is built in as a time for disaster, because there is something that's going to happen on the road that by the time you get one group there to go back and get another group, that group is going to be late. So that was already given. But we have other situations where the contractors have worked with us because we don't have coverage for the routes, and they take their regular route and then they go and pick up another route to go to another school, and they're going to be late. And then we get the concern from families, of course, and I understand it, but it's the concern that the child was picked up late, or they were picked up 10 minutes late, they were picked up 15 minutes late, or they're getting home too early, or they're getting home too late. And we're trying to make sure they get there and they get there safely and get home safely. And so it really is, it's top of mind, and it's one that's pretty urgent that we make some decisions around, so that we can begin to have the conversation with families in February, or in March, so that they're prepared for August. It's not, July, and we're saying that this is what the situation is.
One quick question, and I know we talked about this before at the beginning of the year, for parents of 7th and 8th graders who decided or wanted to elect to have their kid ride the Metro. Is there an opportunity for the upcoming spring semester for them, upcoming January to revisit that for some parents?
There is. So we will in next week, I believe it is, we will open that back up for the next semester. And so they will have to notify us by the last week that the week before the last week that we're here before winter break, that they want to go on to the Metro. So we'll open it back up for them. Right now we have about 300 families. At the last count, we had about 300 families that were taking advantage of that.
I was going to say, I know a couple of people, just anecdotally, that have said to me that, like, one person specifically, they ride a bus, and the bus that could come and take their kids right by where they are. So it's almost easier for them to put them onto the Metro. But that was not something they had thought about at the beginning of the year because of their thoughts.
They were hoping like us that the issue was going to be resolved and the children could get on the yellow bus and get to school on time, and they were going to come on time. And that's just, it's not happening collectively. It's improved, but improved at 80% is not the kind of improvement rate.
Other comments, questions?
No.
So we are in January recommending, we put in this month's minutes. We'll have that discussion again about planning things for January, but recommend that this be a major topic for open discussion and, whatever. That would be great. Thanks for that update and discussion and dialogue. And I'm hearing maybe accelerate ad hoc a bit to the degree that we can. The other piece of that, though, is maybe we need to delay a little bit some of the things that are on our calendar as to when people are signing up for what schools. Because we can't do anything if we go ahead before we've made even any adjustments. If we're moving ahead on signing up for, so far it's been okay because it's been about siblings. at places, but look at the calendar for when we're signing up, or we lose another damn year. You know, we can't do that.
Change things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's, and invariably that's all. Just like, what was it, 4 years ago, we said Clark is going to be on the east side and Gamble, that's why we bought the building and what have you. And then we found out it didn't put it in place for 2 years.
It's being put in place now
Oh,
and communicated.
Yeah. Good. That's great. But I'm just saying, there are answers, or at least some answer, a package of answers
Mhm.
and phases to get all this right. But yeah, we have to, do this. Next on our agenda, I think we did okay with transportation. Do we have the CRA TIF?
Thank you.
Loving it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Exactly.
Yeah. We'll be
We should be
done.
done by
Do we have anybody wanting to speak to us? Rob?
Not at the time.
Okay. Do we have anybody watching us? Oh, darn. I was going to say something.
Like it's gonna stop you from saying what you want to say.
Well, yeah, go for it.
CRAs, we want to provide you an update of
Yes, please.
our
Thank you.
CRAs and our TIFs. So the actual PowerPoint, Rob, is the actual PowerPoint. Yes.
I knew that.
So while he's getting that up, we are submitting for your review 3 new CRAs, and we're doing it because we got to get it. At the time, we didn't realize that the town was going to be repurposed to a special board
Oh,
meeting
gotcha.
on Wednesday, and we were trying to get these board approved before.
Microphone.
Yeah, we're getting a little bad about like, we've seen these kind of people ask.
I apologize for that. Can you hear me now? Okay, so we wanted to make sure that we got the 3 CRAs that we just received from the city approved through finance so that we can get them board approved through the larger board. So these are submitted for your review.
That's my nap notification.
Sounds good to me. Okay, so for the actual presentation, the next slide, please. This is a report out of how much we are actually billing and receiving for our active CRAs. We bill on a calendar year. So we bill in January and then we bill again in May for our active CRAs. So this basically shows how much we billed for both January and May of this year, and then the actual payments that we received for the January and the May billings. As of right now, we have about $390,000 balance for our CRAs for this calendar year. We are, next slide, actively reaching out to the property owners to get them to pay on the invoices that we have sent out. We currently have 364 active CRAs. What we are going to do at the beginning of next year is we're going to really be enforcing the pilot language. And the pilot language suggests that we have the ability to add a 12% interest rate onto outstanding invoices. So we are going to be enforcing that next year.
Yeah,
We
fasten
did-
your seatbelts.
It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Right.
So we did, before we implemented this, and we've sent a notice out to all of our property owners. We reached out to Dan just to say, hey, is this okay? And he did back us in this endeavor. So at the beginning of January, when we start billing, if they're not being responsive, we're also going to be sending them another invoice, I think after 30 days, saying you're not paying, we're going to add on that 12% so that they're going to be giving us more money. In addition, for those who are delinquent, we do report the delinquent CRA owners to the county as well as the city, and then they also go after them, letting them know that if they don't pay, that they're in jeopardy of we're terminating their agreements. We have our bill cycles now, again, where we're billing in January and May, but our additional effort next year will be that the invoices that we send out in May, we are going to be sending them out earlier because we want to make sure that we're getting that revenue in the same fiscal year. So last year we had some challenges because we waited a little late to send out our second half invoices. I think we sent them out maybe May 24th. So there was a lot of delay. I should say we didn't have enough time to collect on those invoices prior to the close of the fiscal year. So that's one thing that we're going to be doing differently this year. With regard to the outstanding aging, our AR team is actively calling to say, hey, could you please pay us the money that you owe us? We are also working with the city of Cincinnati because I understand that you want to be able to get information on the number of commercial versus the number of residential properties.
Yes.
So we are in the process now of gathering that information. We've reached out to them several times and they've sent us documents, but it's kind of hard to decipher what is commercial versus what is actual residential. So that's something that we are continuing to work to get for you all so that we can share that out with you as well. The next slide, please. This slide it shares with you the TIF amounts that we are receiving from our townships, from the city of Cincinnati, and we have it broken out per month. And this is pretty much historical. Historically, we usually get payments for TIF within these months. Next slide. And then this slide actually shows you the TIF payments by city and township. And as you can see, the majority of the payments that we receive come through the city of Cincinnati.
You know, and I'm curious, remember at the end of last year, was it last year, year before last, where they created a whole bunch of new TIF districts?
I mean,
I'm
to get
wondering
in
how
under
this
the wire.
19 million compares to like what it was 3 years ago. I wanted to see the impact of those other TIF districts
Okay. Witness one of
for
that.
next month.
So how does it compare to 3 years ago?
Yeah, because I can't remember that it was not this past December, the December
It's 2
before, when we were finalizing the agreement, they came out and did like 15
Oh,
TIF
yeah.
districts.
Under the
So
wire.
I'm wondering how that is impacting our TIF income.
2020. Yeah.
You're the TIF man.
Tell you what.
I'm getting you like a shirt.
That's
And a cake?
right, buddy.
Is he going to get a cake too?
Yeah, I got a cake. I
You
need
want
a
a
cake.
cake?
I need a cake. Yeah.
I'll get you one.
Yeah. With
Some
semicolon.
material at home.
Yeah.
Yes. Is there anything we should ask the city people today and add
They have a
to
light
the-
agenda. So.
They have a light agenda. There might be time to ask the city people. Are there any questions we have or suggestions? Because Mr. Craig will be happy to ask them or emphasize to them. I'm serious. Tell them something.
I know one of the challenges that we have is sometimes they will combine CRA properties. They'll combine those parcels and they don't communicate that information to us. And then we'll have the property owners that will reach out to us looking for an invoice, but we've not been made of the adjustments or the
It expired. Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you're still wanting them to come and do a presentation,
Might
but that might be the opportunity
be
today
the opportunity.
to
Yeah, it could be
bring
good,
that
yeah.
up because we have asked on several different occasions. And they're telling us that there are going to be changes made to this particular program, but we've not, I would think if it's going to impact us that we would have a seat at the table to
Yeah,
have
really.
that discussion,
Sure,
but we
Should.
have not heard anything.
sure.
You, since Rossi's not going to be here tonight, it's on
I'll
you.
be there.
It's the spirit.
It's at Woodward, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 6 to 2 in the
There's
morning.
there's a like a hotel next to Woodward.
There's a great McDonald's across the street.
It's ridiculous.
It's supposedly 2 hours, so let me know how that goes. Text me. I can't be there. I'm sorry.
Best part of Mike not being there is he did it like, so what day is it again? Is it on Wednesday? Is it on Thursday? I can't be there. They were like, no, it's on Wednesday. Oh, I can't be there.
It's on the public record.
Yeah, but it's Wednesday.
Oh, it's next week. No, that's not going to happen.
July 27th.
There you go. I'm booked. Are there any other? Did I miss anything on the agenda, Treasurer? We're getting close. No. We don't have any. We're agreeing. Just to say yes to it. Again, I just wish they'd get more families in here instead of more bars and lofts. But anything else? For the good of the order, we know that at least 3 topics for December. What were they, folks? We'd have contracts with the new format,
The preschool
report because of the money from whatever,
list of land, CPS
and the
done
list of
land.
lands.
Yep.
All of it. That's vacant land and everything. I think tonight in this city meeting, besides, of course, I'm going to say something about transportation, given the opportunity, but since they appoint half of the SORTA board. But the other piece is there was some good work done a while back where we looked where over a couple of generations, the city and the school district, we're actually placing their rec centers next to our schools. And there really are places within the city that should be viewed as campuses where they're shared. The rec people are here and the school people are here, and invariably there's a playground somewhere or a library. I mean, up on North Bend, there's you've got Pleasant Hill, and right next to it is a library, and then there's athletic fields. Yes, at Ethel Taylor, you have this magnificent big old recreation center, and we really need to be thinking about that. It stopped after we got mad at each other with TIFs. But let's think creatively how we can
Pass it on to
join together.
Liaison for the.
I was just about to say, it's me.
He's the
I
rec
was just
guy,
about to say, like, that'd be a good
but
agenda item.
he's not going to be there today or the
I'll
next
be at my rec meeting.
365.
I'll go to the
Yeah,
I'm at the
carry
rec
that to rec and just say it came out of
meeting.
whatever
Flawless
this meeting
attendance.
was.
Yeah, I'll bring it up. Yeah, because
I think
they're all about it.
it's so important.
Yeah.
Not yet. Now are we unplugged and ready to go?
Yes.
It's 12:26.
All right.
We got it done.